Hey everybody, step right up. The show's about to begin. There's plenty of room down up front, so come on, roll up, roll up. Let's go. We're doing part two of the greatest prog rock bands of all time, the top 100. Today, we're going to be investigating numbers 61 through 80. Oh, boys and girls, what great adventures we're going to have in store for us today. We're going to briefly recap what the criteria is here so that you guys don't get too upset with me when your favorite band is omitted at the end of this. Strength of discography. Number one thing here, if you got one album or two albums, boy, they better be good. Longevity is part two of that. If you got 20 really strong albums, you're probably going to be on this list. Influence and impact, the overall impact that this artist had on the musical landscape as a whole. Commercial and critical success will also be taken account. Overall progginess of the act involved. And finally, my subjective bias. I can't avoid it. Obviously, it's who I am. And we're going to start right now with number 80. We're going to Canada and Saga, that great band that came up concurrently with a lot of the North American bands like Rush and Styx and Kansas. And in my mind, they always got kind of conflated in that mix. They were formed in 1977 in Ontario. They've actually put out 22 albums over the years. You got Michael Sadler, that great vocalist, Ian Crichton on guitar, his brother Jim on bass. What an incredible band. Their debut came out in 78. It was followed up by the Images at Twilight album in 79, and then things got really good for them. They had a 3-album cycle that was just incredible with The Silent Night in 1980, Worlds Apart in 81 with that big hit On the Loose, and then Heads or Tails in 83. A terrific band. They're not super duper proggy, but I enjoy their music quite a bit. And number 79, it's Noi. Yes, Noi is how you pronounce it, I think, with the exclamation point and everything. Formed in 1971 in Dusseldorf by Klaus Dinger and Michael Rother, who had just quit Kraftwerk, so they were hungry for a new venture. They were joined by Connie Plank, who, although just a producer, it was certainly a lot more than that. He was a sound pioneer on his own, working with Guru, Kraftwerk, and all those other bands. He ended up actually working with Ultravox too, which is awesome. This is a band with only 3 albums, so they better be good. Yeah, 1972's debut album, just incredible. Their second album came out in 73, and then a couple years later, they came out with Noise 75. Just amazing. When this band first came out, the New York Times said that they were the landmark of experimental rock, and it's really hard to argue. The impact of Noise has just been astounding throughout the decades at number 78. Here's another one of those big-time, big bands, sold millions and millions of records. Are they prog? I don't know. At number 78, it's the Alan Parsons Project, formed in 1975 by, Alan and Eric Wolfson. Alan had been working in Abbey Road Studios. That's where he met Eric. I guess he was working on some kind of weird side project about Edgar Allan Poe. So the two got together and they worked together for a long, long time. Eric was not just his musical compatriot, but also his business manager. So he's the one that got him involved with Ambrosia and Pilot and all those other things he was doing. But their early run, my goodness, you had the debut album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination in 76, I, Robot in 77, Pyramid in 78, Eve in 79, Turn of a Friendly Card in 80, and Eye in the Sky in 82. Things went a little down after that. Ammonia Avenue, Vulture Culture, I didn't like quite as much. I'm featuring Eye in the Sky because it's just incredible. It's my favorite album from them at number 77. Let's go to Poland. SBB, Silesian Blues Band. Maybe it also means Sugacz Burs Budaj in Polish means search, break, build. I really don't know what it stands for, but in my mind, it just stands for some really excellent, strong, fusion-y, spacey kind of prog. I hear some Pink Floyd elements going on here, but the jazz fusion stuff is certainly a big part of what they do. They have 19 albums out, which is just crazy. But it's their early stuff that I know. I have not heard all 19 of their albums, maybe like half of them. And the ones that I really like, the debut album, 1975, New Horizons. And in 78 came Wolomí o Brezik, Saga, and the Slovenian Girls. I love that album, but my favorite one, the one I'm spotlighting here, is Memento Z Banalinum Triptychum from 1981. It's a fantastic record. This is the record that got me into SBB, got me to explore a lot of their catalog. They're deserving of the number 77 slot here. Absolutely they are. At number 76, maybe a band you've heard of called Hawkwind. Yeah, formed in 1969. Dave Brock originally wanted to call this Band X or Group X, which would have been kind of a cool name, but there was a Band X later, wasn't there? Or Brand X. Don't get me confused with the Phil Collins stuff here. We had Lemmy in the band. We had Nick Turner in the band. Ginger Baker even did a little stint in the band. Early on, they actually had a top 40 hit with Silver Machine, hit number 3 in the UK. Their debut came out in 1970, was produced by Dick Taylor. In Search of Space came out in 71, Dormini Faso Latido in 72, Hollow Mountain Grill in 74, and Warrior of the Edge of Time at 75. But it's pretty obvious to me that their best work, their masterpiece, is actually their live album, Space Ritual, which came out in 73. If you like to, smoke a little something, put the headphones on and chill out, you could do a lot worse than Hawkwind, I guess. At number 75, we're going to Northern Ireland. It's Belfast. It's 1971, and you've got a bunch of guys that want to form a band. They end up doing it, and they're called Froop. They ended up opening for some big acts in the early 70s in Ireland, like Queen and King Crimson and Genesis and whatnot. They put out 4 really, really strong albums. Future Legends, Seven Secrets in 74, also Prince of Heaven's Eye in 74, and then Modern Masquerades in 1975, which was produced by Ian MacDonald. They were working on a 5th album when the record label said, these sales are terrible. We're not going to spend a dime promoting your band, so they disbanded, but they were working on a 5th album called Dr. Wild's Twilight Adventure. Man, I want to hear that. At number 74, it's Mostly Autumn. They were formed in England in 1995, and I guess they were like a Pink Floyd tribute band. So when you listen to their music, you do hear that Pink Floyd element. You also hear, Genesis, but you hear a lot of Celtic influences in their music, so you kind of jump to Jethro Tull a little bit. The female vocals definitely give off a Renaissance kind of vibe. The first 8 albums were Heather Findlay on vocals, and she's just terrific. The last 6 have been Olivia Sparinen, and she's great too. I mean, I can't really tell you which one I like better, but I do know that Brian Josh is the leader of this band, the main songwriter, guitar player, and they've got so many great records, but the early stuff is where I really like them. The debut, For All We Shared, also in 1999, The Spirit of Autumn Past, but to me, their masterpiece was their 3rd album, The Last Bright Light from 2001. And then you fast forward 20 years, 2021, they dropped Graveyard Star, and it's almost as good. What a great band that's, proven their mettle over time, and that's what this list is all about. And number 73, the legendary Gong makes the list. How could they not? Are they prog? Are they space rock? I have no idea what Gong is, to be honest with you. They were formed in Paris in 1967 by David Allen and Gilly Smith. They have been joined over the years by just an incredible host of guest musicians and members of the band: Bill Laswell, Bill Bruford, Chris Cutler, Steve Hillage. Their first album came out in 1970. It was called Magic Brother, and it was kind of like a psychedelic pop album. It was all right. They really came into their own with their second album, the oddly titled Camembert Electrique from 1971. It's just fantastic. And then after that comes that amazing trilogy that started in 73 with The Flying Teapot and Angel's Egg, and then 1974's You. That's the sweet spot of their discography. Just incredible. They were a favorite of George Jefferson. Sherman Hemsley apparently flew the guys into LA and had the city council put up gong posters all over Hollywood Boulevard or whatever, and brought him to his house. It's pretty cool. David Allen is obviously no longer with us, so the band is now led by Kavis Cherobi, who you might know from Knife World and Guapo and Utopia Strong and all that other stuff. Bassoon Monsoon at number 72. It's Muse. Yeah, another one that you can question their prog credentials. I do not. The band was formed in Devon in 1994 by Matt Bellamy, Chris Wollenholm, and Dominic Howard. It's a power trio. Their first album came out in 99, Showbiz. It didn't have a whole lot of prog to it. It's a pretty cool record, but they really came up on their second album, The Origin of Symmetry from 2001, then Absolution the following year, Black Holes and Revelations in 06, and The Resistance in 2009. Those are all fantastic records. They've had 3 or 4 since then. They've got a brand new one coming out this year called The Will of the People, and I can only hope that they bring the Rachmaninoff back, Well, you got enough dance songs on the radio. You guys don't need another hit. Let's just get back to the prog, shall we, boys? At number 71. It's Tangerine Dream, formed in 1967 by Edgar Froese, who left us in 2015. Most of their classic records, he was joined by Christopher Frank and Peter Baumann. Later on, he left the band, and Johann Schmoling joined. Edgar left us in 2015, so he had a hand-picked successor, a guy named Thorish Quajaling. There's like 60 music scores, over 100 albums under their belts. You got Risky Business, you got Thief, you got Legend, you got all these amazing soundtracks, but their 70s albums were so good, those Virgin albums, particularly 1974's Phaedra, 1975's Rubicon, and 1979's Force Majeure. This band knew how to wreak atmosphere and emotion out of instruments that you don't normally think of as being emotive instruments. Tangerine Dream, just great stuff. At number 70, we're going to Japan. And Kenzo, formed in 1974. They are kind of a jazz rock fusion-y kind of thing, but they're so much more than that. Most of their music's instrumental. They do have some vocals on some of their tracks. They've got 10 albums out, and 9 of them are great. There's one that I'm not super crazy about, but the early stuff was great. The later stuff has been good. Their first album, Kenzo, came out in 1980. Kenzo 2 came out in 82. Kenzo 3 came out in 85. But their masterpiece was Yume no Oka from 1991. Just an amazing album. They dropped another album in 2014, but we haven't heard from them in 8 years. I'm really hoping that there's a new Kenzo in the works, because I love those guys. And number 69, let's get all heavy. And Tool makes the list. Formed in Los Angeles in 1990. These guys have won 4 Grammys. You know the lineup. It's Maynard James Keenan, who was, he was born in Ohio. Woohoo! Adam Jones, Danny Carey on drums, and since 95, Justin Chancellor's been the bass player. He replaced Paul Gilmore, who was on that first album, Undertow, in 1993. That was followed up by Anima in 96, Laturlus in 2001, 10,000 Days in 06, and then they had Fear Inoculum in 2019. That's pretty much their discography. Barring a couple of EPs. That first one, that Opiate EP, was good. I got into this band. I got Undertow as a Christmas present, like back in 93, because I like that song Prison Sex. MTV was playing it a lot, so somebody bought that CD for me, and I've been a fan ever since. Danny Carey's drumming, come on, man, come on. I know these guys aren't super proggy, but they do worship at the altar of Robert Fripp, and that's good enough for me at number 68. It's the Cardiacs, kids. Oh, yeah. Formed in 1977 by the Smith brothers, Tim and Jim. They were joined by the great William D. Drake on keyboards. They've had a lot of members flow in and out over the years, but these guys are just nuts. Tim died in 2020. What a great loss. So we'll probably never see any more Cardiacs releases, but they put out 5 amazing albums of just crazy information, dense, herky-jerky, all over the place. Blink and you miss it kind of music, everything in the kitchen sink thrown in there, but at the same time, it's up-tempo, and you never get bored listening to these guys. Their debut album, A Little Man and a House and the Whole World Window in 88, On Land and in the Sea in 89, Heaven Born and Ever Bright in 92. My favorite from them, Sing to God, came out in 96. Then they had a final record in 99 called Guns, when they were down to a 4-piece, John Poole and Bob Leith in the band at this point. But Cardiacs, yeah, good stuff. Number 67, it's Barclay James Harvest. Yeah, formed in Oldham in 1966. The core 4 was Les Holroyd on bass, John Lees on guitar, Mel Pritchard on drums, and Stuart Wolstenholme, who left us in 2010. I guess Mel Pritchard died in 2004, so the 2 remaining members now have 2 competing bands. John Lees and Les Holroyd both have versions of the band out on the road touring. It's ridiculous. Their debut came out in 1970. Their sophomore album was so much better once again. My favorite album from them came in 1974, which was Everyone is Everybody Else. Then they had a couple really great records in the mid-70s. Time Honored Ghost in 75 was fantastic. And boy, Gone to Earth is a terrific album in 77. These guys really played up on their proximity to the Moody Blues, and they even wrote a song about it, but they're not the poor man's Moody Blues. These guys had their own thing going on. Yeah, they were kind of soft and gentle, and they weren't going to, destroy you with, 32nd notes and 64th notes and crazy stuff, but they might just do that to your brain with the quality of the songs they were writing. Number 66, we're going to Norway. It's Motor Psycho, kids. Oh, yeah. Hans Magnus Ryan and Bent Sather. They've been the 2 main guys. The drummer, they've gone through a couple drummers. The drummer now is Thomas Jameer. He's amazing. They put out a record in 2012, which I'm spotlighting here, with the Stale Storkolen, or Storloken. Wow, the Death-Defying Unicorn. What an amazing album. These guys have been everything. They've been a metal band. They've been a pop band. They've even put out stuff that sounds like country. They put out stoner rock, stuff that sounds like Sabbath, stuff that sounds like Yes. They're all over the place. You never know where they're going to end up next, but I highly, highly, highly recommend all 3 albums in the Gulvag trilogy. That's 2017's The Tower, 2019's The Crucible, and 2020's The All Is One. All 3 of those records are amazing. That's why they're on this list, boys and girls. And number 65, probably the only Belgian band gonna make this list. It's UniversaZero. Originally, they called themselves Necronomicon. They were formed in 1974 by Daniel Dennis, the great drummer, who once these guys broke up, went on to join Art Zoid. Chamber music, odd instrumentation. Instead of being influenced by the Beatles and the Stones, these guys are influenced by Bartok and Stravinsky, so they have a very classical bent to what they're doing, but just thinking all the time. The stuff is crazy. The music never rests. It never sleeps. It's always going in some really cool directions. Their debut came out in 1977, and it was reissued under a different name. They call it 1313 now. 1979, Heresy came out. 1981, I can't pronounce this album, but I love it. It's Shoe du Dehors. 1983, Crawling Wind. 1994 used. They've had some records since then. Those are the ones that I know and I love. They're just an amazing group. I really enjoy them. Not my normal prog with capital P, but they're definitely progressive. At number 64, we take another trip to Poland and a band that was formed in Warsaw in 2001 by Mariusz Duda, the great singer and bass player. He's joined by drummer Peter Kozerodzki and the great Peter Grodzinski, who left us in 2016. And you got the keyboard player Michael Lapage. Wow. Grodzinski's death is just a major blow to prog rock. He was an amazing, amazing guitar player. But Riverside moves on with Mariusz Duda. He is the leader, the songwriter, the singer. So their last album, Wasteland, was really, really good. Their debut came out in 2003. Second album, Second Life Syndrome, they had gotten signed to Inside Out, so they started getting some notice. In 2007, Rapid Eye Movement came out. 2009, Anno Domini, High Definition. And then in 2013, Shrine of the New Generation Slaves. But to me, it was all building up to 2015's Fear, Love, and the Time Machine, the final album with the great Peter Grodzinski on guitar. What a masterpiece. What a great band. At number 63, all hail John McLaughlin and Mahavishnu Orchestra. Woo, yeah. Yeah, I don't really do a lot of fusion on this channel. I don't talk a lot about jazz and jazz fusion. I was questioning whether I'd have any pure jazz fusion on this list. Return to Forever, Weather Report, Brand X. You'll have to check in and see if any of those make it. But here we are with Mahavishnu Orchestra. Formed in 1971 by John McLaughlin. He was joined on those first couple records by Billy Cobham, Jan Hammer, Jerry Goodman, who was also in The Flock, and Rick Laird on bass. Apparently John wanted Tony Levin, but Tony was busy at the time doing God knows what. I guess he was working with Herbie Mann at the time. And he hired Jerry Goodman because his first choice on violin was busy, and that's Jean-Luc Ponty, but he was able to get him later on some later records. Yes was a huge fan of Mahavishnu Orchestra. Todd Rundgren was a huge fan. This was a time when jazz fusion was getting played on rock stations, and, you know, it was everywhere. It was so big there. I love this band. Okay, I'm not a huge jazz guy, but I love Mahavishnu Orchestra. I like how they weave in some of those Eastern sounds and what they're doing. Their debut album came out in 1971, The Intermounting Flame. 1973 saw their masterpiece, Birds of Fire. And I love the 1975 album with Jean-Luc Ponty, The Visions of the Emerald Beyond. Those are phenomenal records. Love those guys. All right, at 62, let's go to Sweden and Kaipa. Formed in 1973 as Urakaipa by Hans Luden. The early version of the band had the great Roine Stolt on guitar. He was like a little teenager. They put out 3 really, really good 70s Scandinavian prog albums. 75 was the debut. 1976, Inget Net Under Solen. What an amazing album that is. 78, they released Solo. They put out a couple really bad albums in the 80s, and then they came back in the 2000s, 2001. They came back with Notes from the Past. They've released like 9 or 10 albums since. The first 3 were with Roine Stolt, then he left, and now Per Nielsen's playing guitar, and he's just a shredder deluxe, so you don't even miss Roine. I love old Kaipa. I love new Kaipa. The only Kaipa I don't like is that 80s Kaipa. So avoid those 2 records. All the rest of them are fantastic. Finally, number 61. We're going to France, and it's Nemo, the great French prog band led by Jean-Pierre Loueton. They were formed in 1999. He's always helped out by Guillaume Fontaine. The debut album came out in 2002. Their best records, their highest rated records on Prog Archives includes a C Part 1 from 2006. I believe it is the number 1 album of 2006. Barbarous from 2009. Revolution from 2011. and Coma from 2015, which was their final album. I believe that's ranked like number 3 for that year on Prog Archives. I love Nemo. I love JPL. Anybody that's been watching this channel knows I absolutely adore French Prog, and I love what JPL's doing. I love Nemo. I guess he's going back and re-recording his first album, that first Nemo album, and doing it again. Now that he's completed that amazing Sapiens trilogy, the solo project he was working on, I think I'm going to shoot a video about all 3 of those Sapiens albums because they're just so amazing. But anyway, thank you so much for sitting through part 2 of the top 100 prog bands of all time. Tomorrow we are going to be doing 41 to 60, and it just gets more and more exciting as we go along and get higher and higher up on this list, and I got to refer less and less frequently to my notes. Anyway, have a great day. I love you guys. Thanks for the suggestions on my bursitis. I'm feeling a little bit better today, but talking about prog rock always makes me feel better anyway. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.